welcome everybody to Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room. Today I've got Joaquin Juatai. I know I messed it up, man. I know I did.
All right.
How you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing pretty well. Everybody calls me JJ,
Okay.
because nobody can pronounce my name. So it is what it is. My entire military career, I was used to it.
I imagine basic was fun for you, huh?
Yeah. Well, I ended up I'm a Navy veteran. I ended up
Okay.
being recruit chief petty officer, meaning I was the senior recruit in the division. So they just called me Airpock and they didn't have to worry about it.
All right, man. So what made you decide to go in the military? Did you go in right after high school or
No, no, I foolishly went to college and I had no structure. And I realized about the third year in, wait a minute, I'm paying for this. Maybe I better start paying attention. Well, at that point in time, I had about a 2.8 GPA, maybe a little lower. My grade in beer drinking was really high,
yeah.
and girl chasing. I had an A minus in girl chasing and an A plus in beer drinking.
Well, that explains the
Um,
Navy part.
yeah, so I realized I wasn't taking advantage of what I should have been in regards to the college education. So I started applying myself, found classes that I was interested in, enjoyed, and started studying. And I turned my GPA around from very nearly getting kicked out of college to a 3.8,
Wow.
and ran out of financial aid. So I got back home to Alaska, and I had been roofing during the summers for a couple of years. And I realized that was not going to, my body was not going to handle that. It was not
Yeah.
going to, I just wasn't going to be able to handle hot tar roofing in Alaska for the career. And the money was good, but it's brutal, hard work. So I
Yeah.
started looking around. Now, I was a music major in the Navy, and I looked at possibly joining the Air Force band. I went and auditioned for the uh, uh, Air Force band at Elmendorf, at the time, Elmendorf Air Force Base. And they turned me down, which was fine. My dad asked me an important question. He said, "Do you want your music to be your vocation or your avocation?" And I thought about it, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to have to go play every day."
Yeah.
So I started talking to the Navy, and one of the things that I've always been good at, from elementary school on, was writing. And so rather than trying to pursue the band career, I joined the Navy as a journalist. And I had enough college credits that I graduated as an E3 from basic and went straight to A school. It was all locked in, which was nice.
Yeah.
Uh, my recruiter never told me a lie. He was very honest with me, and I went in. Look, I'd been working construction for several years. Boot camp was easy. There was nothing they could throw at me at basic that I hadn't had on a roof on a construction site 10 times over.
Yeah.
So, I kind of breezed through basic, and A school was really not that difficult because I'd been writing, editing, and things like that in college. I managed my college radio station. I started that radio station's first website on a green screen computer. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I was writing uh, HTML, basic HTML code, back in 1993. you know, and so it just was natural progression to do something that I was good at and enjoyed. And I had a daughter. Like I said, I was getting A's and A minuses and drinking beer and chasing women. I had a daughter, and I knew I needed to take care of her. So, the real reason I joined the Navy was to take care of my family. But I discovered that the Navy was far bigger than just getting a paycheck and making sure my kid had
Yeah.
insurance. And I loved being a sailor. Absolutely loved it. I won the Print Journalist of the Year for the Department of the Navy in 2002.
Wow.
Um, went to the USS Abraham Lincoln in late 2003 and merged the departments. I was a JO when I joined. I was trained as a JO. Then we merged into MCs, mass communication specialists. And we lumped journalists, photographers' mates, lithographers' mates, and draftsmen all into one rating. The problem with that was most of the new ratings job was what journalists were trained to do, with a little bit of what the others were trained to do. But we were the jacks of all trade. And the photographer's mate rating had been so closed that now at this point I was an E6. I was the LPO of the department, hand chosen over a senior photographer's mate, senior to me, who made chief as soon as the rate opened up in the merger.
Wow.
And so I got locked at E6 and I went up for chief 4 times, but they were still advancing all the guys with time and rate from photographer's mate, draftsman, and lithographer.
Yeah.
So I got stuck at E6. My next command was NORAD Northcom, and I broke my back in late 2009. And it took the doctors a full year to find the fact that I had broken my L5 vertebrae. And during that period of time, they got me hooked on painkillers. They got me off the narcotics and onto that's I can never remember the name of it. It's a synthetic narcotic that's supposedly not addictive, but it's short term. And
Mhm.
I'd been taking it for about 4 or 5 months, and I was having hallucinations. I was all kinds of shit. And the doc looked at me and said, "This is a short term med. You're not supposed to take this for this long." And I'm like, "Well, something's still wrong with my back." They still hadn't figured out what was wrong with my back at that point in time. Anyway, they finally found the broken bone, my L5 vertebrae, and they did a fusion. Um, but here's the problem: I had PTSD. I didn't know it. And so before I broke my back, I was self medicating. I was self medicating with alcohol. I was self medicating with
Yep.
excessive overexercise. I was, when I broke my back, I was in marathon condition. I ran between 10 and 14 miles a day.
Wow.
And every day, I was literally running my body into the ground. I would I probably broke my ankles with avulsion fractures probably 3 times each, maybe more. Um, my knees are my knees are bone on bone. I was doing everything, but everything I was doing unknowingly, I was self medicating. I was doing it because something was wrong in here,
Mhm.
and I didn't know. There was no diagnosis. I just had a broken back all of a sudden, and when I couldn't go do all that heavy duty training, um, my mind, I lost my mind. I went crazy. I
Yeah.
spent, I got surgery after about a year. And about 2 months after surgery, ended up spending a little time in the Grippy Sock Hotel and was diagnosed with PTSD finally. And when I was discharged medically in 2011, I was on the zombie cocktail. I was on 13 different medications, 30 some pills a day. And I would literally get up in the morning to take my pills. When my alarm went off, I would get up and take my pills, lay back down because I was drugged to the hilt, look at the ceiling. I would stare at the ceiling for 8 hours until it was time to
Wow.
take my pills again. And somewhere in that, um, I decided this wasn't living. This isn't living. Uh, my wife was my second wife at the time. She said, "Well, I think you need a service dog." And I was like, "Okay." I didn't know what a service dog was. I didn't know anything about it. I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, whatever." And she had convinced me that she wanted to breed Malamutes. And so we had, from our first litter, I, the day that he was born, I knew that this little guy was going to be my dog. And he actually literally fit in the palm of my hand the day he was born. He weighed 16 ounces, 1 pound. And now this is not normal. First of all, most of the time you don't breed your own service dog. Second of all,
Right.
have understanding that that connection was there and that that's your dog. the day the dog is born, not normal. But I knew that was my dog. He's 13 now, and he's retired, and he's on the bed in the other room with Mama. Um, but he worked in public after I got done training him for a little more than 10 years solid. And he earned being a grumpy old man. Malamutes, he's 100 pounds,
Yeah.
full purebred Alaskan Malamute. Anything after 9 years is a blessing. And like I said, he's 13. He should have died a few years ago. He ain't shown any indication of wanting to do that anytime soon. He's going to be old and ornery, and he's literally Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino. He's he's get off my lawn. He really is. He's a grumpy old fart. But I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, that dog saved my life more than once, and literally saved my life more than once. And I owe him his grand retirement, being old and ornery and sassy and getting spoiled. I owe him
Yeah.
that because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that dog.
Yeah. I can relate. So in some instances, I didn't realize I had PTSD, and I tell everybody they think I'm joking, but when I retired out of the army, I didn't think I was fucked up. I thought everybody else was fucked up. You know?
Well, I mean, see, here's the thing. And I've done a lot of research, and I've done a lot of discussion. And I've done all the treatments. They gave me all the drugs. I did cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive therapy. I did the shocky shock thing, EMDR.
Mhm.
It's not a shocky shock thing, but the EMDR. I did group. I did all that shit. Nothing was helping me.
Yeah.
Um, and and one of the things I learned though, I at the time in Colorado Springs, one of the docks that the V that the military, the Army was farming vets out to via the VA, and I was kind of I was in this weird limbo for more than a year while I was boarding and everything. And this doc happened to be one of the foremost researchers in PTSD, and he explained something to me that made a lot of sense. And at the same time, now he was a psychologist.
Mhm.
My psychiatrist was drugging the shit out of me. At the same time, I'm seeing a psychologist who's doing the behavioral therapy and doing these other modalities with me. And he explained something that made a lot of sense, and it's this: PTSD is I don't call it a disorder. I call it post traumatic stress. PTS is your physical, your brain's physical reaction. It's actually a physical reaction. The the neurological connections in your brain change. They bypass your reasoning center and go straight to the lizard brain, to the reaction center, and it's what keeps you alive. It is the instinctual response to extreme conditions, and it allows you to stay alive. Now, I'm not a combat veteran. It was the we responded when I was on Lincoln to the tsunami in Sumatra, Southeast Asia,
Mhm.
and it was literally thousands and thousands of bodies.
Yeah.
Just I completely shattered my entire world. I know from firsthand from walking down the streets what biblical destruction is.
Yeah.
There's still to this day things I can't smell without having flashbacks. But my 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 brain perceived that this was a threat. I was in danger, short circuited, so that I was in fight or flight response, and that's what kept me alive. In the army, I don't know if you're a combat vet, but combat, same thing. Cops do, firefighters.
Yeah.
You're in imminent danger. Your brain short circuits and gets you right straight into fight or flight response. It's a natural response. The problem is once those neurological pathways are reworked, they don't change. They're stuck there.
That makes sense.
So I don't believe that veterans who have post traumatic stress are different or wrong or ill or have a disorder. It is the body's natural response to preserve itself. And I think that it's a gross misnomer to call it a disorder. And although it is disabling in the fact that we don't necessarily fit in the way that society works on a day-to-day basis,
Mhm.
which that makes us disabled according to the standards of society, as far as our personal ability to function, maintain life, find ways to reconnect to the people who love us and who we love. Um, we work out ways to do that. And for me, um, one of the things that helped me find a way back to a connection, post traumatic stress also severs your connection to the living world around you. And this is from a not my personal experience, but it's passed to me from another veteran who did a lot of time in sweat lodges with Native Americans. And one of the shaman, or I don't know what you'd call what the right word is, but everybody understands what a shaman is.
Yep.
One of the shaman told him that uh, what the spiritual problem was that he was disconnected from the world around him. Well, that resonated with me because I was essentially just a zombie. I was dead until my wife put that little 16-ounce puppy in my hand, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden a connection formed. And as that puppy grew, that connection grew. Skeeter is my brother. He may have fur and four legs, but that's my brother. I've called him Bubber his entire life. He's my
Mm.
brother. And he started teaching me how to reconnect with life. And I am without, well, I have his successor with me, but uh, and he's here. I mean, he's not gone. He's not dead yet. I have a successor who is an English Mastiff, who we call Munchie. Um, right when I started socializing her, uh, COVID happened. We got locked down, and I couldn't take her out
Mm.
anywhere.
I didn't even
And
think about
so
that.
she didn't get. Oh, it's devastating.
Yeah.
I've been without a service dog since early 2020 because I couldn't take her with me and I couldn't give her the exposure training she needed. So
Yeah.
she's afraid of everything.
Yeah.
And that's not her fault, and it's not my fault. She's an English Mastiff. Mastiff, the breed, they're very. You have to hit it just right with them in training.
Mhm.
They're very particular. I've never had a dog like a Mastiff. I'll never not have another Mastiff. I absolutely adore her. She's amazing. But because we missed that window right when she was about 9 months old, we got locked down. She's afraid of everything. She's a great service dog. She does everything I need her to do at home where she's safe.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating, but I still got the old man. He ain't kicking off. He ain't kicked off yet, and it's not fair to him to bring yet another puppy into the household. He doesn't like puppies in the first place.
Mhm.
He's very. It's funny. Um, he is very much focused on uh, keeping things calm.
Yeah.
Literally, when I trained him, um, I was in chaos, and he helped me find calm. So that's his whole goal. That's his whole focus. Calm, calm, calm. So bring a puppy into that situation. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
That's not what we do. So he's
Yeah.
really a big ornery shit. Hey, Skeet. He's just came in the house. He's a big ornery shit to puppies.
Yeah.
He really is. He's horrible. He doesn't like them because they're puppies. They're pop, pop,
Yeah.
pop, pop. It's the same reason he's not a real big fan of little kids. He would never bite a child. He would never bite, but he tries to herd children, small children, into a circle and keep them in one spot so they're calm. And it's hilarious.
I need that at my house.
Yeah, right. And he is a 100-pound dog who people think mistakenly is a wolf. So they're going to listen when he says, "Hey, move over here." He's great
Yeah.
at crowd control, which is pretty useful. If you have PTSD.
Yeah.
Uh, and another thing that's really useful is because of his size, people don't. Twofold: people won't approach me because they're afraid because he's huge,
Yep.
or oh my god,
Yeah.
in which case, and we'll talk about that. We'll get into that.
So let's get with some of the stereotypes, right? So I'll give you a little bit of my background, and this is where I started learning about it. And I wasn't looking for a service dog or anything. And when I got out of the army, I was that guy you just described. I thought what I was doing was normal and everybody else was fucked up. But I would go home, I would have dinner, and then I went to the bedroom, and I stayed there until the next morning when it was time to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt comfortable. That's where that was my place where that was my calm. Well, when the calm and the storm started changing and I was retiring and my life became chaos, things started getting worse for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find a job when I got out. Um, I was a mechanic, and that was after 2008 when, slowly the economy hit everything and Ford dealerships started closing and all that stuff. So I ended up starting my own trucking company, which was, you know, a mistake for somebody in my condition, but I did. And it put me in a truck driving 600 miles a day by myself, thinking for 6 weeks at a time. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And so my son and his girlfriend, they had some puppies, and I didn't really know what I needed, but I knew I was lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took one of the puppies, and it was just like what you said. I picked her out from a picture, and I knew instantly that was going to be my dog. And she was in the truck with me for about 2 years before I closed the business. But I had those same thoughts of, you know, maybe getting training and finding somebody to help and make her a service dog. Well, that's when I started realizing that industry can also be very crooked too. And when you start coming across all these places where, literally their advertisement is take your dog anywhere with our certificates, you know, and I started seeing, I said, man, it just made me sick, you know, and then it happened in my own family. My brother and his wife showed up. They were homeless, and they showed up and they found a service dog blazer to put around their dog, and they called her a service dog. You know, and that dog was far from service of anything.
Yeah.
And I got to where I really didn't trust anybody, and having her so long, I became so attached that that alone helped, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Well, I had somebody that trained service dogs. He had a PTSD dog, and he offered to train my dog, and I ended up turning it down because I didn't want to part with her for the time that it was going to take for him to do it. So I still don't have a service dog, but having her, makes the world. But I think there's a stigma, and that's kind of what I was getting at. There's kind of a stigma that because of all that, and you see people with dogs or whatever, and you instantly start looking negative at it
Mm-hmm.
because you feel like, and part of it was from the media, that everybody's out there trying to get a service dog so they can take their dog anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
Have you kind of came across that same?
Well, so like I said, when my ex-wife said you need a service dog, I was like, okay, I didn't know anything about it.
Mhm,
Well, I'm a trained journalist, so I started reading.
mhm.
I started Googling, and I came across oh, just get our certificate, take your pet everywhere. I
Yeah,
saw that stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense.
it doesn't.
And I read, now this is back in 2010, 2011 time frame. I read what was it? It was Canines for Warriors was just starting to launch. Um, and I read their stuff, and I just, the things at that point in time that were being portrayed in the media didn't make sense.
Mhm.
So I started looking more into it and I discovered the Americans with Disabilities Act. Oh, okay. Well, they told me I'm disabled. See, I never considered myself to be disabled. The Department of the Navy informed me I was disabled. The Department of Veterans Affairs informed me I was disabled. And the Department of Social Security said, yeah, you can't work. And I've been there ever since. Then I ran into the whole VA nonsense of 60%.
Yeah.
It's not service connected. They finally, I kid you not, at the 10-year marks of disability, they finally acknowledged that my knees are actually the Navy's fault.
Yeah,
Steel
I'm
toe
going through
boots
that
on
same
steel
thing.
decks,
Yep.
they finally owned it. And anyway, so I started reading and I discovered the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I discovered this magical document in the ADA, and that is the frequently asked questions about service dogs, published in 2010, and I believe it might have been amended in not amended, but some clarifications were made, I believe, in 2015. But the Americans with Disabilities Act, and in particular, and very specifically, the section about service dogs, defines a service dog. Okay, so one thing I learned was that what the media is portraying, and these people selling certificates online, that's not what makes a service dog.
Right.
Okay, so here's the definition of a service dog. A service dog is a dog, or in certain cases, a miniature horse, that is individually trained to assist a disabled individual with their disability. That key word there, that very important word, is individual. The
Mhm.
dog is individually trained, just that dog, to assist an individual, just that person.
Yep.
So when you break that down and start to think about it, the first condition for a dog to be a service dog is you have to be disabled.
Yep.
Okay. The second condition is that the dog is trained to assist you with your disability. Whatever that dog's action that assists you may be. For example, I don't just have the psychiatric disability of post traumatic stress, but I broke my back. And so one of the things that I need from time to time, is why I have 100 pound plus service dogs, is sometimes my back just gives out and I need help staying on my feet. And if I end up on the ground, I can't just get up. I have to
Right.
be able to climb up on something. Well, a 100 pound dog taught to just stand still and brace so that you can put your hand over their shoulders and over their hips is a stool that can help you get up off the ground.
Yeah.
Um, so, those are specific actions designed to help my disability. Another thing is and there's argument about this. There's a thing called deep pressure therapy. That's where a dog that weighs at least 50, 60 pounds lays across your midriff, across your lap, tops of your thighs, and on your middle section, creating weight there, right? That weight, that pressure, it's a lot like a weighted blanket or a weighted vest. That pressure can actually help relieve pain and it can help relieve anxiety.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's a legitimate trained task. And here's why there's argument about whether or not that's a legitimate trained task. Here's why I say it is. Excuse me. I say that is a legitimate task that assists the disabled person because first of all, you can't tell me whether it helps me or not. But I can tell you when my mastiff lays across my lap, the pain in my lower back that I live with constantly eases up. It helps relieve pain. Okay.
Mhm.
So, therefore, as the disabled person, I am telling you this is an effective task I taught her to do to assist me with the constant pain. There's always pain. And because we spend half an hour, 45 minutes every morning with her across my lap while I drink my coffee, I'm able to then get up and go about physical things during the day. Things I'm not supposed to medically, I'm not supposed to do, but I can because I've found these ways to deal with it. Um, so you have to be disabled. The dog has to be trained to assist you with your disability. Here's the rest of the rules. The dog must be under your control, the handler, under the handler's control at all times, or this is important because dogs are still animals. If the dog is not under the handler's control, the handler must be taking immediate effective active action to regain control. See, the people who wrote the ADA thought they're brilliant. It's brilliant. They remember that dogs are still dogs. They're not robots. If they were robots, then we'd have service robots, but we don't. Okay. So if something happens and the dog isn't behaving, as long as you get the dog back under control, it still qualifies as a service dog under the ADA. And the last thing is the dog must be thoroughly housebroken. Okay. Now, here's the cool thing, but also the thing that can get you into trouble. If your dog's trained to assist you, you're disabled. Dog's trained to assist you. Doesn't matter who trains it. Disabled people have the right to train their own dog. It says there, right in the law. Why? Because it can be grossly expensive. It can be stupid expensive. If you go buy a service, a trained service dog, and most of those are scams anyway, but you go buy a trained service dog, you're looking at 20, 30, $40,000. I know of an organization that takes reservations for 3 years out, and they charge $75,000 per dog. They also happen to be a scam and are embroiled in lawsuits. But people were paying them that. People were coughing up that money because people are desperate for some kind of help.
Yeah.
Um, but you have the right to train your own dog. And as long as your dog fulfills those requirements, trained to assist you with your disability, under your control at all times, thoroughly housebroken, according to the law, that is a service dog. Now, the law also gives the people around you rights, like businesses. Okay. They have the right to, first of all, ask, is that a service dog required because of a disability? That is literally the question as the law describes it. Those are legally the words you can ask. If you answer yes, you are claiming to be disabled. Okay. And claiming that your dog is trained to assist you. If you are not disabled, you are committing fraud. If the dog is not trained to assist you, you are committing fraud. You are presuming the protections to the rights of a disabled person. You are committing disability fraud. Okay. The second question they ask is, what tasks is the dog trained to perform? Now, everybody gets up in arms about this because we have to deal with our emotions. We have to respond emotionally first. I'm not telling you what my disability is. Well, that is not what was asked. What task is a dog trained to perform? An easy one that he's trained to perform, he's laying right behind me. An easy one he's trained to perform, get me out of a crowded location, find an exit. I don't have to tell you what my disability is. I can say he's trained to help me find an exit when I need to exit. Another thing I taught him to do, find my truck. For a long time, especially while I was under the medication, I would go with him, go shopping, grocery store, and forget in the 20 minutes, 30 minutes I was in there, forget where I parked. I couldn't find my truck. I spent 40 minutes in Pueblo, Colorado in 98-degree temperatures with him burning his paws on and trying to find my truck. I taught him how to find the truck because I couldn't remember. Takes me straight to the truck. That is a legitimate trained task. Another thing I trained him to do, he's actually doing right now. So he's laying right behind my seat. Okay. Before I had him, I was eating at a restaurant with my wife, and it was loud. I got hearing loss, Navy, jets, aircraft carriers, right? I've got some hearing loss, and it was loud. And the waitress came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and I didn't hear her coming. And I came up out of my chair swinging. Thankfully, I caught myself and did knock her out because I would have caught a felony. She startled me. I couldn't hear her. In a loud environment like that, I have to read your lips if we're talking. So what I did was I taught him to lay behind me like he's doing right now. He's just in a little arc right behind my chair. Like, here's my chair, here's my dog. So in order for somebody to approach me, they have to walk around the 100-pound wolf. He is not a wolf. He's a purebred Alaskan Malamute. People just think he looks like a wolf. I have to make that real clear. That you have to walk around him and I could see him, and then I'm not startled. Directly effective response to a PTS trigger event. Doesn't happen anymore because the dog's blocking. Okay. So again, if I tell you, he provides, so I call that he provides space around me so that I don't get startled. Don't have to tell you what my disability is. Now, there have been situations where restaurants or stores have wanted to argue, well, that's not a real task. According to the law, you can't say that because, again, who are you to say whether or not that affects or assists me with my disability? It's none of your business. The only person who could have any kind of opinion on that is my psychologist. Period.
Yeah.
Are you a psychologist? Do you know what my history is? Shut the fuck up. So
Yep.
you know, so that's one of the things I learned though is, well, I don't have to go to some organization. I can train my dog myself. So I did. And about 13 months of age with him, 14 months, a little over a year, my wife got another puppy, a little bitch to breed. And that's when I discovered he's not a fan of puppies. He did not like her. And after about the third time, he snapped at her. My wife said, "You better take that dog to training or I'm going to get rid of him. I'm putting him down." And I'm like, "Hell, you are. That's my brother." So what I did was we had a PetSmart. We lived outside of Pueblo, Colorado. We lived a little bit east of Pueblo. And there was a PetSmart or Petco, PetSmart, I think. It doesn't matter. One of the pet chains in Pueblo, right on the north side of town. And they had just hired a fabulous trainer named Jason. I wish I could remember his last name, but he happened to have just graduated with a degree in animal behavior. He was a behavioralist, and he was teaching their training classes. So I paid a whopping $125 for a 6 week basic obedience AKC basic obedience course, right? Um, and I went in, met Jason, explained, introduced Skater, said, "This is what's going on. I need him to be my service dog, but he's being ornery." And so we started going to classes. By the third class, Jason pulled me aside and said, "Look, this dog is perfectly well trained. You're just not communicating to him right." He says, "It's not a matter of the dog not being trained. It's a matter of you being able to talk to the dog." By the end of that class, we not only got our Canine Good Citizens certification, but we were so far ahead of the rest of the class. Once it clicked in my head that I needed to communicate to my dog, I needed to pay attention to my dog, I needed to trust my dog. Once that clicked in my head, um, we took off. He got his Canine Good Citizenship and his Advanced Canine Good Citizenship certificates in 6.5 weeks. Because the problem wasn't that he wasn't well trained. I trained him very well. The problem was I wasn't communicating to him correctly out in town, out in the public.
Right.
And by the time we graduated, I lacked the confidence. That's what happened was the trainer taught me. He said, "I can't teach this dog anything. It's you that's the problem." He trained me. And that honestly, most dog trainers, especially if they have a behaviorist background, will tell you that the problem is not the dog. The problem is the person. It's the two-legged idiot on the end of the leash, not the four-legged good boy down walking around.
Right.
You need to learn to communicate with your dog. And once that barrier broke in my mind, and I've done things with this dog. We traveled across, while I was researching my first book, we traveled across the country a total of 6 times. We went from Michigan to Oregon to Michigan, back to Oregon to North Carolina, Texas, Oregon, and back across through Texas and back to North Carolina when we finally moved here. And I was stopping. I went through Ohio in one of those trips. I think I went north the last trip. Anyway, I interviewed a veteran at the Mayo Clinic in the Mayo Clinic in Cleveland. in the clinic, in the cafeteria of the clinic. We went right in, did everything because he's a trained service dog, you know, um, and interviewed another handler at the Mayo Clinic. We interviewed handlers. We went off everywhere. Nevada, um, Reno area. We went all over the place to talk to veterans, got interviews in order for me to put the book together. Um, he's traveled very well. But the only thing I haven't ever done to him is put him on an airplane. We've never flown, and that's because he's a 100-pound dog,
Yeah.
and I'm not a small man. And I never liked flying even before post traumatic stress. But after there was a lot of flying in Sumatra. That's how we got in and out. I'll never set foot on a helicopter again. Um, and so, after everything went down, flying became something I'm just absolutely not, it's not good. So, why would I cram myself into a little airplane and then force him? Not that he's not capable. He'd lay down right at my feet and do his job. But I just decided it wasn't worth the stress for me. There are things I don't do anymore, period, with or without a service dog. There are things that I just no longer do. And I'm okay with that. I've learned to do other things and find fulfillment in other ways.
Right.
But yeah, the so one of the biggest issues I found, I asked the VA and they're like, hey, we don't know anything about service dogs. We're
Yeah.
not, we can't help you. And
I've talked to
to
them
this
too.
day,
Yeah.
that was back in 2011. Okay. To this day, unless you find there are exceptions, but to this day, the VA is going to tell you we're not going to help you with a service dog. That's just it's a cultural thing with the VA. At the same
They
time,
told me that there hasn't been enough science to prove one way or the other.
okay, so see now through the VA system, I have managed to have some incredibly good psychologists and psychiatrists.
Mhm.
When I lived in Michigan, I had a psychiatrist who was practicing, he was VA psychiatrist in Traverse City, Michigan. Um, and I had to drive up there from where I lived in Cadillac to see him once a month. He happened to have been one of the doctors who studied um, mini press. It's a blood pressure medication in the 70s. And they studied it with Vietnam veterans. And so they were studying this blood pressure medication, right? And one of the things that the Vietnam veterans were reporting was that this drug, um, when they took it, they were having less nightmares. So the VA psychiatric department started using this drug, prescribing it to assist with reducing nightmares. And what's the other name? Mini Press is the commercial name. Um, See, I haven't taken it for a few years, so I can't remember. So anyway, the way it works is it lowers your blood pressure. So if there's less blood going around in your brain while you're sleeping, brain isn't as active, so the nightmares are reduced. How did they know that mini press reduced nightmares? By patient reported outcome. Okay. They don't know if there's a chemical reaction in the brain to the drug that changes the neurons that make nightmares. They don't know anything like that. They know that Vietnam veterans who were taking this for blood pressure were reporting less nightmares. Okay.
Okay.
So, through a patient reported outcome, they decided this is effective for nightmares and they started prescribing it for nightmares. But here's the thing, because I was on like 300 milligrams of it per night at one point in time. I have naturally low blood pressure. In fact, when I went and saw my doc 2 weeks ago, my blood pressure was 108 over 74. Now, I also have severe sleep apnea, which we were learning around that time. Take somebody who stops breathing 116 times an hour and lower their blood pressure.
Yeah, it's a dangerous mix.
That is a recipe for a potential cardiac incident, for anoxia. I have brain damage from lack of oxygen because of severe apnea. And they were giving me a drug to slow down my nightmares that was lowering my consciousness level and lowering my blood pressure and could have stopped my heart.
Yeah.
And nobody thought to think, well, wait, hey, have we checked him for this? Have we checked him for that? I went and got an apnea test, and my respiratory therapist said I was the third worst case he'd seen in 25 years of practice.
Wow.
He'd only seen two other veterans with worse apnea than me. He said, how you managed to have any kind of a career in the Navy is beyond me. You must be one stubborn son of a bitch, because you have literally for years been dealing with less than half an hour's sleep a night. And, and, I'm sure that from experience in the military, that when you have sleep deprivation, you end up borderline psychotic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I spent years on active duty, essentially teetering on the edge of psychosis. And I was dealing with that in unhealthy ways,
Right.
you know? Um, so the VA says, well, there's not enough evidence. There's not enough that we don't have enough empirical evidence that service dogs assist with post-traumatic stress disorder. Yet the very same organization gives veterans a drug that could kill them
Yeah.
to lower their nightmares because the patients report the outcome. My response to that is bullshit. Here's the empirical evidence right here. And there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of veterans who have the exact same empirical evidence. We have service dogs and we are still here
Yeah.
because the dog helps us with post-traumatic stress.
I mean, I
We
think
are
there's a
the
lot of benefits to it. Like I said, my dog's not a service dog. She's not trained to do anything, but I can vouch just having her, if nothing else, made me happier. It gave me a sense of purpose, something I had to take
right.
care of, you
Yeah.
know. And she's good with obedience. She can sit, she can stay, she can shake, she can high five, roll over, she can do all the basic stuff. And so I do believe just in that aspect, just call it an emotional support dog, whatever you want to put a name on it. It don't matter to me. But having a dog, I can vouch, help me at least with my attitude. It may
Yeah.
not have helped me anyway other than that for my PTSD, but at least for my attitude, it helped me. So I
Yeah.
can vouch for that.
Well, and that's another thing that's another issue that the VA has caused. And I have literally had this argument with other veterans who will say there's no such thing as a PTSD service dog. Doesn't exist. That's just an emotional support animal. The reason that happened is because VA psychology and psychiatry will tell a veteran, oh, you just need an emotional support animal. That'll help you. Just get an emotional support animal, get a pet. And they don't understand the distinction. Now,
Yeah.
the Americans with Disabilities Act, remember that document I told you about, the frequently asked questions?
Yeah.
That actually specifically spells out two disabilities in its description of how a dog can help. Two, only two: diabetes, diabetic alert dog, and a dog that helps a veteran returning from war with PTSD. It literally says it in the law that PTSD, essentially, if you connect the dots, they're describing a dog helping a veteran with PTSD, therefore naming PTSD as a legitimate disability that a service dog, according to the law, can help.
Right.
So bullshit.
Yeah.
But here's another problem. Because the VA won't help you, corporately, the VA will not help, right?
Right.
And so the doctors don't understand the law. The doctors say, well, just get a vest for your dog and you can take it anywhere you want. Doctors have misinformed veterans historically. Doctors have said, well, you only need an emotional support animal. And Veterans have taken that away and saying, well, then there's no such thing as a PTSD service dog. It's just an emotional support animal. And they will actually fight with you. And I mean, I have had these arguments, knock down, drag out on Facebook with fellow veterans who can't move the trees away and see there's forest there.
Right.
They're so because their doctor said, and they're not willing to listen to what the actual law. It's not doctors that determine a service dog. It's the law.
Right.
Period. It's not doctors. Doctors determine you're disabled, but you have the responsibility to train or have trained a dog to assist you with your disability.
So let me ask you this: is there any requirement for documentation or anything? Is there a third party agency that you have to take your dog to and it has to pass tests and get stamped off and say congratulations, you can chase beer and girls now because you graduated college?
No,
Um, no.
no, no. So
So
the other thing that document again, it's and I will make sure you have the link so you can post them in the podcast. The document says that there are no registration certifications required for a service dog. Again, what is required is that you're disabled and the dog's trained to assist you with your disability.
okay.
And that's the very basic level, period. Then the dog must meet these other criteria. So it also states, and I actually have it in the book here so I can read it to you verbatim. It states that there are organizations. Sorry,
You're good.
getting old. Got to have that. Hang on a second. I'm trying to find the quote, the box, because I boxed it and everything so people could find it. I have people. There are people who carry this book around in their dog's vest as a guidebook or a. I had one veteran tell me this was the owner's manual for a service dog. Um, oh, good. Of course, I can't find it. Okay, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember directly. There are organizations online that sell certifications and registration certifications for service dogs. The Americans with Disabilities Act and the Department of Justice neither require or recognize these documents as legitimate proof of dog being service dog.
That's what I was kind of wondering because I've seen them
Yeah,
too.
doesn't exist. Does not exist. Those are scams. They're fraudulent. Now, say you get a dog from an organization, they give you a certificate. What they are certifying to you is that they gave this dog X training.
Okay.
Perfectly legal, but has no legal bearing.
Right.
You can't wave that certificate around and expect entry. And anybody who understands the law, like say at a hotel, is going to laugh at you if you pull out a certificate
Yeah.
because it's not recognized by the law. Only your word is. See, one of the things I also like about the ADA, about the service dog section, is it relies on you being an honest human being.
Right.
It relies on personal responsibility. And here's the other reason why legally it doesn't even make sense to have these certificates and registries. Okay. At the end of the day, if the shit hits the fan, something goes wrong, the dog bites somebody or something. Okay. At the end of the day, the only person that will be held accountable for that incident is the person holding the leash.
Right.
And I'll tell you right now, no matter where you get your service dog from, no matter what certification you have, when you end up in court, if you can even get the organization to acknowledge and send a representative, they're going to go, we trained the dog and then it was theirs. We have no responsibility. And they have no legal responsibility.
Right.
At the end of the day, the person holding the leash is always responsible.
Right.
And that's how the ADA works is you accept when you decide you're going to have a service dog, you accept full responsibility for everything that entails.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, the one of the reasons I wrote the first book is because so many people, veterans, had no clue. They just went to Battle Buddies or Battle in Distress or whatever organization. I'm throwing out names and they're probably not even right names. They just went Canines for Warriors. They just went to Canines for Warriors and they got this dog. It's a newly minted handy dandy dog. But see, the other drawback of most of those organizations is they don't teach you your rights.
Yeah.
They don't teach you that those rights come with responsibilities. And that if you're not fulfilling those responsibilities, you disqualify your dog as a service dog. Okay. Perfect example. This happened to me. Skeeter is a dog. He got into the trash during the night. I'm like, oh dear, whatever. Clean it up. We go about our morning. I had to go pick up dog food at the local hardware store. This is in Cadillac, Michigan. Hardware store had really good dog food at good prices. We go in, and Skeeter all of a sudden just starts freaking out. And I'm like, what? I'm like, knock it off. Get over here. Focus. Got him under control, right? Well, he was freaking out for a reason. He got into the trash the night before. And he had the squirts. And he's like, fine, you told me no. And he let fly right there in the store. And I'm like, okay. One of the number one things I tell handlers is listen to your dog.
Yeah.
Listen to your dog. He's freaking out for a reason. He's trying to get my attention. Why is he trying to get my attention? I wasn't paying attention. I was mission oriented. Get the
Yep.
dog food. Get the dog food. So the responsible handler does what? Well, first of all, I got him straight outside. I'm like, I'll be right back. There was an accident. I'll be right back. I'll take care of it. Got him out in the grass, and the poor guy evacuated his bowels. It was terrible. He was sick as hell because he got in the garbage because he's a
Yeah.
dog. And dogs do dog shit. So we got him drained. I threw him in the truck. I came back in. I asked for cleaning materials. I said, I am really sorry. He got in the trash last night. He got sick. I need to clean this up. And they gave me a spray bottle cleaner. They gave me a big pile of paper towels. And I cleaned up my mess
Yeah.
because that's my responsibility. I apologized profusely. They said it's not a problem. And when he's feeling better, feel free to bring him back. He's one of the best dogs we've ever seen. I got my dog food, loaded in a truck, took him home, and babied him the rest of the day, fed him rice for dinner. Okay. So remember what the ADA said. If the dog is not under the handler's control, the handler must be taking immediate effective action to regain control. Okay. Um, how you behave as the handler directly dictates how people around you are going to perceive you.
Right.
Okay. Now, another story. Skeeter and I walk into Walmart. The number one place where veterans learn that they have PTSD, fucking Walmart.
Yeah.
I have my own theories about that, but you want to have a PTSD breakdown? Go to Walmart. Skeeter and I walk into Walmart, and at the time, this was pre-pandemic. There was a McDonald's right inside the door on the left, and so we would go at 6 in the morning, go do the grocery shopping, go get breakfast at McDonald's, sit down, have a cup of coffee and an egg McMuffin, right? And so we're sitting down. I'm having my breakfast. He's being his good self, doing exactly what he's supposed to do, laid down right behind me. And we can hear across the store. And he looked at me and I looked at him and I'm like, okay. Anyway, so we're shopping. We're doing what we need to do. I had to go get a new egg pan. So I'm going towards that direction of the store where the little yap dog was. And so I'm literally looking at egg pans and I can hear this harness on this little yap dog jingling. And so I said, Skeeter, focus, watch me, sit, watch me. And that little yap dog and its Karen came around the corner. And that dog about freaked. And I looked her dead in the eye, and my best folksal voice said, this is how a trained service dog behaves. Get your pet out of the store, lady. And she literally turned tail. Her eyes got this big, and she turned tail and ran. And Skeeter's just sitting there looking at me like, Dad, you're getting a little stressed. And I'm like, it's cool. Okay. night and day difference between the behaviors of the animals.
Right.
She had Fifi the Wonder Poodle yapping its goddamn fool head off, and the perception for everybody around them is, oh God, it's another one of those service dogs, right?
Yep.
I had a well trained, focused, behaved dog who did exactly what I told him. And when the yap yap came around the corner and started losing its shit, didn't respond because I taught him to watch me
Right.
and get his cues from me, you know? And that's the whole thing. Look, train your dog. It's really not that hard. I mean, you do have to find a dog that has the right um, uh, personality. It's got to be pretty calm. It's got
Hmm.
to be able to focus. And we've got these veterans these guys, and more power to them. But you got these guys who were handlers in the military, so I got a Malinois. I got to have a Malinois, and they don't remember the fact that Malinois is at this energy level all the time, and then they
Right.
can't figure out why handling their dog stresses them out when they've got freaking Tigger bouncing on a leash next to them, you
Right.
know. Whereas I picked Skeeter. I grew up in Alaska, and I spent a couple of years while I was in high school mushing dogs, and I had very very familiar with Huskies and very familiar with Malamutes. I chose a Malamute because at 100 pounds, Malamutes have great hunting instincts. They're powerful, strong animals. They're pulling dogs. They want to have a job. They are working animals, right?
Right.
But another thing they have is calm because at that size, you don't have the energy to waste being a spaz.
Right.
They're very focused dogs. Huskies, I've seen some extremely successful Husky service dogs. They're very much an exception because Huskies are spazzes. They're race dogs. They're let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, but you get the Husky and you focus on convincing the Husky that they do have a job and it's to help you, and they settle down. And see, that's one of the things that Petco trainer taught me was the number one key to training a Malamute is convincing him that it's his idea. And I went, oh yeah, that changed everything in the dynamic between he and I. Once I realized that all I had to do was make sure he knew it was his idea that we were going to do X, Y, and Z. I say the word TRUCK today at 13 years old. He's like, ride, ride. He's ready to go. I made rides rewarding in the TRUCK. So he knew that's where I want to be. And then it was never a problem. To this day, I take him out the front door, neighborhood full of dogs and people, tell him to get in the TRUCK. He goes straight to the door. He doesn't wander. He goes straight to the door because it's his idea.
Right.
That was the key.
That makes sense. And I something you said kind of, you know, resonates with me because I'm a firm believer too that the working class dogs, you know, they have that purpose. My dog, she's a black mouth cur, and they fall in that working class breed. And if I don't give her something to do, she will do something that you're not going to like, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so I have done the same thing. I work with her. I do different tasks. I make sure that the toys that I buy are interactive toys to make her think and those types of things. And from that point, once I started realizing that, life became a lot better. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
she's completely housebroken. She, like I said, I can tell her to sit, stay, and I can walk away. I don't have to have her leash. She walks next to me. I can open the door, tell her to get in the car. She'll get in the car. I
Yeah.
mean, she does all that stuff. Because she was in a semi truck for years. She's like what you described earlier. She's scared of everything,
Yeah.
and so I don't know that she would ever be a service dog, but she doesn't have to be. She is who she is, and
Yeah.
I think when soldiers they try to pick their favorite breed to make that breed their service dog, and
Mhm.
those are not the same things. The reason
Yeah.
why they were your favorite dog is for different reasons than what you need them to do. And
Yeah.
I think that that is why you see a lot of failed attempts for
Well,
for this.
you do, and again, I think another thing and another reason why we see a lot of failures is because people go into it with unreal expectations,
Right.
and honestly, the service dog industry has created that problem.
Yeah.
First of all, it absolutely disgusts me that there's an industry that people have figured out that this is a business that they can make money on.
Right.
Okay. Because what they're doing is standing on the shoulders of disabled people, not just military veterans with PTSD. Service dogs can be trained to do a lot of things for many different disabilities. And
Right.
they're standing on the shoulders of those disabled people and making a profit. And that disgusts me.
Yeah.
And they're doing so by doing things like perpetuating the myth that you have to have a professionally trained service dog.
Right.
No, you do not. You have the right to train your own service dog. Perpetuating the myth that, another myth. Well, it's not a service dog, it's not wearing a vest. Law doesn't require you to put a vest on your dog. Look, here's the thing. When you walk into any place, restaurant, grocery store, hotel, business with a dog beside you, you are already wearing a label.
Yeah.
Because if it's a service dog, then you're disabled. So you're already labeled. Why require a vest, a label?
Right.
That has happened in the past where disabled people had to be labeled. They had to wear little yellow armbands, and they ended up in concentration camps, and they were murdered by the millions
Yeah.
in Germany. Okay, so the ADA, the people who wrote the ADA, understood that that's not something that we could do. You do not have to put a vest on your dog. Again, why the business has the right to say, is that a service dog trained to assist with your disability? Okay, so they can ask, but you are not required to label. So anybody who tells you, well, of course it's a service dog, don't you see the vest?
Yeah.
That vest doesn't mean a goddamn thing.
Look.
I illustrated this. I was doing a presentation with a VFW with this goofball. Can you look up here? Hey, look. There he is. There's the old man. So I did a demonstration in the VFW. Okay, and what I did was, this is in Oregon, and it's a bunch of boomers. I'm Gen X, a bunch of boomers, business owners, local business owners in Oregon, in the small town in Oregon, and bless their hearts, and all veterans, good people. And so I stood him up, and I'm talking to him about it, and I said, and because they wanted to know, because they were all business owners, well, what do we do when someone comes in with a dog? And I said, well, one of the things is you can't require a vest. And they said, what? And I said, it's not required by law. And he's wearing his vest, of course. So I reached down, unhooked his collar from his vest, because I used to hook it on a vest, and then, hooked it on his collar, took his vest off, and said, is he any less trained than he was with the vest on? And he's just standing there looking at me like, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, no. And I said, vest doesn't mean a thing. It's the behavior of the dog,
Right.
you know? And that's another myth. Oh, you have to have a vest. No, you do not. It is not required by law. Now, I have to make a caveat, okay? A trained service dog that is actively working, not required to have a vest. However, the Americans with Disabilities Act does not protect your right to have a service dog in training. So while you are training, your state can require that you put a vest on the dog that says service dog in training. That's perfectly legal, because the Americans with Disabilities Act does not protect puppies.
Right.
It protects trained working service dogs.
Right.
Your right to use. It doesn't protect dogs either. It protects disabled people. It protects your right to use a trained service dog. So how it gets to that point is up to you,
Right.
according to federal law. Okay. States have stepped in and added things like, okay, but you have to have a vest and has to have service dog training. I get it. I I don't disagree with it. It makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. And then it gives you the ability at some point in time to say, we're ready, and rip that in training off.
Right.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. Again, federal law gives the overall protection of rights. State laws, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act takes precedence unless the state laws are more permissive, which is why the state saying if you're training it, it has to have service dog and training on its vest. It's more permissive because the ADA doesn't protect service dogs in training.
Right.
So the state is, but you got to do this. Okay. So people want to get up in arms about that. I don't want to wear a label. You already labeled. You're
Yeah.
wearing a label. You just walked into a restaurant with a pit bull next to you.
Yeah.
You're wearing a label,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand. I don't want to wear a label. There's a dog standing next to you. You're labeled.
Yep. Yeah. You're absolutely
He,
right.
anybody who has any common sense knows, oh, that's a service dog. That person's disabled. And then you get the, well, you don't look blind because people still don't understand. Look, I'm diabetic. One of the ways he has literally saved my life, I didn't teach him to do this. He figured out something was wrong with me. My blood sugar was below 60. I was slipping into a coma and he wouldn't let me pass out. And I was homeless at the time, was living in a tent, and nobody would have found me for at least 3 days. They would have figured out something was wrong when I stopped answering text messages on my cell phone.
Yeah.
And then somebody would have come looking for me, and I would have been dead a couple days by then. Okay. He figured out something was wrong by the smell. They can smell your breath, they can smell your blood sugar changing. He came, headbutted me, just kept ramming me. And I'm nodding off like I'm going to pass out. He keeps ramming me. And finally, I'm like, what? I got up. And I was so out of it, I cooked myself a full meal. Like, I made myself fried rice. That takes almost 20 minutes, half an hour. How I was still standing, I don't know. I ate it, started waking up, took my blood sugar, and after I ate food and started processing and my blood sugar started to come up, after that, my blood sugar was 70. I was down. I was so out of it that I didn't realize I literally had a bottle of juice in my cooler, and I could have taken a couple swallows of juice, got my blood sugar up like that.
Yeah.
But I was so close to being gone that what I could do was cook a meal. I opened the cooler to get eggs out for my fried rice and looked at the juice and kept cooking.
Yeah.
That dog saved my life. I would have passed out. I would have gone into coma. I would have been gone, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so I started paying attention to my sugar. And every time it started getting low, if he'd nudge me, he'd start nudging me. I'd give him a treat, tell him, good boy, I'd take care of myself. I'd take a glucose tab or eat something or whatever. And so I taught him by just simply every time he noticed and nodded and nudged me, I would check my sugar and he was right. And he'd get rewarded. And so that became a trained behavior. Now, the ADA says the dog must be trained to do work or perform tasks, and those are two different things. Work is not commanded. So his immediate automatic response to my blood sugar dropping is work. Me telling him lay down behind me so that he's blocking for me is a task.
Right.
Okay. Both are legitimate under the law.
Okay.
Both can be trained. Another thing that is work, I taught him to interrupt my nightmares. He would lay on me, hold me down because I would flail while I was having nightmares and lick my face and wake me up. And every time he did it, I had treats next to the bed. And I'd just give him a reward. Good job. Thanks, buddy. Good job. Okay. And so it became something that he naturally, I'd start mumbling and flailing. He'd come flop on me and lay on me and hold me down so that I couldn't flail and wake me up. Work. I can't, if I'm having a nightmare because I'm asleep, I can't command him to wake me up.
Right.
That is work. It is legitimate trained response. And again, like we talked about at the beginning, who are you to tell me that doesn't stop my nightmares? You can't.
Yeah, you're right.
You know.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about um how how your recommendations are for, let's say there's a soldier out there that wants to go down this road, right? What are some where should they start at? I mean, because
Okay.
I've heard this vary from trainer to trainer that the tasks for PTSD or service usually don't start until the dog is a couple years old, and the rest of that is foundation and training. So where
Okay.
how do you recommend a soldier go?
First of all, I want to make it clear I am not a dog trainer. I am a person who trained his service dog. Okay. Um, I have been around dogs my entire life. I have a lot of knowledge. I've read a lot. Like I said, I mushed dogs in Alaska. Great extensive experience with the breeds that I use. Well, except for a mastiff. Mastiffs are new to me, but man, they're cool. Anyway, um, so the first thing I would encourage any veteran is, first of all, understand what you're getting yourself into. Read the Americans with Disabilities Act section on service dogs. Read the frequently asked questions. Read. Um, I sound horribly mercenary here, but look, I actually wrote a book to help veterans answer these questions. Okay. This book is all the answers that I was looking for when I was in that position. And I couldn't find because anybody you ask can't tell you,
Right.
won't tell you, or tell you wrong. Okay. So I used my training as a journalist in the Navy. I did absolutely accurate research. I back everything up with footnotes, references to the laws. The actual laws are listed here in the back where you can go find them on the websites. Links are there. I went and did all the research because nobody could answer that
You're right.
question. Nobody can answer that question. Okay. So I went on a mission and started finding it. And after about the third year, we're working already. He's 3 years old. He's been in the field with me for almost a year and a half. And about the third year that I was handling him, I went, why doesn't this exist in a simple form in one place where people could get it? Why doesn't it? Why do you have to go to ada.gov and you got to go over here to HUD for the housing? You got to go here and you got why? Why is it when you look at this source, it's completely different than what this source says? So I did the research. Um, and it cost me my marriage, but I needed to help veterans.
Yeah.
Um, part of what he did was help me start to heal. Remember, I was taking all those drugs, I was taking all those pills. Okay, so first of all, you need to make a decision that maybe there's something better.
Right.
Most, I can't give you an exact number, but I can tell you of all the veterans who handle service dog school I talked to, a good 90% of them, if not more, stop taking all the drugs the VA dumps on them when they start handling a service dog. So ask yourself, is this the life I want where I get up to take my pills?
Right.
And then I take my pills, and then I take my pills. Is this the life I want? Is this life? Okay. Ask yourself. Then educate yourself. I would say, before you even decide you're going to contact a service dog training organization, if that's what you want to do, educate yourself.
Right.
Okay. Learn about the ADA. Understand what you're getting into. Do you have a friend who has a service dog? Ask to hang out with them and go do their daily routine for a day and see what it's like. Because again, remember what I said, when you walk in with a dog, you're wearing a label.
Right.
You have a big flag that says, pay attention to me. Its tail's wagging as it walks beside you.
Yep.
And there are three responses that you get in public with a service dog. Oh my God, a dog! Oh my God, a dog! And I can't fucking believe you people.
Yeah.
Those are the three responses. Okay. Now, remember the story about the little yap dog in the Walmart?
Mhm.
That Karen is why we get the I can't fucking believe you people response.
Right.
Okay. People love dogs, or people are terrified of dogs. So expose yourself to that. Learn what it's like. Put yourself in a handler's shoes for a day if you can. Okay. Then you need to think about, well, do I have the ability, the knowledge, and the skills to train a dog myself? If not, do I need to go to an organization? Okay. From there, I'm going to tell you that I, out of my own personal experience, highly recommend that if you do use an organization, you use what I call cooperative training. That's where you have your dog. You are responsible for that dog 24/7, and you and your dog go to class and you learn how to train your dog. Okay. And there's a couple of reasons for that. If we're talking about post-traumatic stress, everything, everything the dog does for you is based on the bond you have with your dog.
Right.
Okay. If somebody else trains my service dog for post traumatic stress, I have a dog that reacts after something's happened. Okay. All these organizations where you get a fully trained dog, that dog is taught to respond after you do something. You start crying, the dog responds.
Right.
You raise your voice and start yelling, the dog responds. My dog doesn't let me raise my voice. He smells, senses, hears the changes in my body language, my tension, my adrenaline, and comes and nudges me before I get to the point where I'm yelling
That's what I
and
need.
distracts me, right? Before that rage kicks in. You know the rage.
Yeah,
You know that
that's
your
my
dog.
biggest problem.
Yeah, right. Okay. He doesn't let me. I haven't had, with him by my side, I have not had a panic attack in 10 years. Without him, I've had a couple. With him by my side, I no longer have rage issues. Without him, I no longer have rage issues. He taught me not to rage because when he was this little guy and I would rage, he would be scared and he'd run away from me. So I was like, why is he doing that? So then I started thinking about what I was doing. See, the other thing is, this takes a lot of introspection. You need to be in a position where you're willing to accept I'm doing this.
Right.
I'm losing control. I shouldn't be. How do I change that? Okay. You have to be in a position where you can wrap your mind around that and accept it and not judge yourself because you can't. A lot of times that rage is something you can't control when you're in the throes of post traumatic stress. It's again a natural response. How do you keep yourself alive when you're in full panic mode, fight or flight? Well, you need rage to fight. Okay.
Yep.
So I started catching myself ramping up. I call it spinning up. I'd start to catch myself spinning up. I'd start to see him shy away from me. And I'd focus on him and I, yeah, come here, give him a toy or a treat, right? And pet him and play with him. And all of a sudden I'm calm. Now, here's another thing, and this has been medically proven. When you pet a dog, it releases endorphins, it releases dopamine, it releases serotonin. You calm down
Yeah.
when you pet a dog. That has been medically proven. They have taken hormone levels. They know that those hormones change when you pet a dog. Okay. That is empirical evidence that they can look and say, these are the numbers.
Right.
So that's another argument for it. Okay. So you have to do a lot of introspection. And then you got to think about another thing. And this is real talk here. A lot of these organizations give you the dog with a shock collar or a pinch collar. Okay. Real honest, real truth. If you have PTSD and you have rage issues, can you guarantee you will not get frustrated with your dog and in a rage use a training device
Yeah.
inappropriately?
Yeah. You're right.
And the answer is no, you fucking can't. Because by that point, when you're there, you're not in control.
Yeah.
Okay. So I highly recommend you only use an organization that uses positive reinforcement training. And again, if you are doing cooperative, if you're training the dog and they're teaching you to train your dog, you learn those tools without using methods that could be harmful. I'm not getting into the argument of if it's used properly, it's just a tool. I'm not getting into that argument.
Right.
I'm saying me with
Right.
post-traumatic stress and rage issues cannot guarantee that I am not going to harm my dog with that tool. So it is better for both of us if I train him without tools that could harm him.
Right.
Okay.
And I heard a really good saying about, and this was, I can't speak on their knowledge, but this was a dog trainer on YouTube that I was watching, and he uses shot collars too, but he said something that really made a lot of sense to me. He said, if you can't train your dog to sit unless you have a dog shot collar, then you need to go back to training
Yeah.
because you don't you if you have to rely on a shot collar to train a every task, then you're not using the shot collar right.
Yeah.
And so that made sense to me as well. And I
Absolutely.
think there's people out there that don't
Oh, there,
understand that.
no, there. Look, I personally knew a trainer. We're no longer associated with one another, but I personally knew a trainer who was that guy with the shot collar that for everything, and his dog was immaculately behaved
Mm-hmm.
because his dog was scared. So the other question you want to ask is, when you're using these training methods, do you want your dog to respond out of a desire to please you, or because it's scared of what will happen if it doesn't?
And
Everything he's been trained to do is reward based, and he desires to do it. It's his idea because I'm going to get a treat if I do this.
right,
Okay. He wants to do it. Well, now he's ornery and he just demands treats anyway because he's old and grumpy. But you know what? I bitch about what a grumpy old asshole my dog is. He's still better behaved than 90% of the dogs you come across every day. And
right,
the things that he does that I find outrageous are only outrageous in the context of him doing it in the middle of a grocery store.
right,
But as far as just normal behavior for essentially what's a 90-year-old dog, perfectly normal. He's
right,
an old crotchety curmudgeon, just
right.
like me. I'm just not as old. you know
And
so
so
you
I
got to
use
ask yourself that question. So then the question becomes, if you don't feel like you have the knowledge, then you want to go to an organization. First of all, any organization that says if we don't train it, it's not a service dog, run.
yeah.
Okay. I'm talking specifically about a group of organizations that fall under the envelope of ADI, Assistance Dogs International. I deeply dislike them. Their sole goal in the United States, as stated by their CEO, is to become the sole source of legitimate service dogs in the United States, as they are in much of Europe.
Which comes with a really
Fuck
big
that.
profit.
Yeah, fuck that. And they believe in standardization. Service dogs should do A, B, C, and that's it. And that
Yeah,
makes it a service dog. And if it does something else, it's not real.
right,
Okay. Again, that's not up to you, a third party, to tell me what assists me with my disability.
right.
That's not your job,
I mean,
unless you are my psychiatrist or my psychologist.
even just talking about PTSD, I get there is a ton of disabilities out there, but let's just talk about
Yeah,
PTSD. You can't go from one person. How PTSD affects me is going to be different than how it affects you. So what I
completely.
need
Yes,
help with
absolutely.
is going to be different than what you need help with.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Which
to
is
say your
why,
dog has to do this,
yeah, yeah. That's why I really recommend that you be involved in training your dog,
I
because
agree.
while you're training, you're going to start, little light bulbs are going to go off in your head. You're going to go, oh, wait, how am I feeling? What's the dog doing? What am I doing? How can I redirect the dog to do something to help me? See, most of what he does or did in regards to PTC, Munchie does it too. My master does it too now because I taught her. But most of what both of them do is redirect my attention to them
Mhm.
rather than whatever it is that's pissing me the fuck off. I Before we started today, this afternoon, I was gaming, okay, and I was on a really difficult level, playing a game called Meet Your Maker, and I was on a really difficult level, and I kept dying, and I was getting more and more upset, and all of a sudden, there's a 165-pound mastiff in my lap, and I calmed down, and I was like, okay, right. I
Yeah.
taught her When I start stressing, here's a response. Okay. She did. That was work, not a task. She did. She felt me getting stressed. She smelled it, detected those hormone levels changing. They can smell that. Got in my lap and calmed me down. It's really hard to get pissed and rage quit with a 165-pound dog in your lap. You can't do it.
Right.
Well, I mean, you can, but it's not fun,
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, and again, remember I said 90%, 99% of what a PTSD service dog does is built on the bond you have with your dog. If George from Canines for Warriors traits my dog, I'm not bonded to that dog.
Right.
Okay.
And that's so that was the biggest thing I have, right? And I'm not gonna, there's an organization out there, and I'm gonna ask them this question when they come on my show. I don't think, they don't specifically deal in this industry, but I have seen lately that they're passing out dogs. Um,
Uh-huh.
they don't have any, they don't, have anything that this is a PTS dog. They're passing out puppies, is what they're passing out, right? And so, I wanted to ask them, what is their thought? Are they passing out something that just because the veteran's lonely, or is there another reason? Because again, it kind of baffles me that we're taking, we're going 8 week um, old dogs and passing them to a veteran and there's
I,
something that's going on. And
I
again,
am I am sorry. I don't care who you are. An 8 week old puppy is not a service dog. It's a
right,
goddamn puppy.
right. And
Okay.
and I want to be
It's
clear. I'm not claiming that
yeah.
they're saying that their
Well,
dogs are
but so
service
that's a
dogs.
red. But see, that's a red flag. That's an alert. If you're a veteran and you're looking, oh, we can get you a puppy next week. What?
Yeah,
Wait, what?
yeah. No,
What are we doing with that puppy? Because that's a fucking puppy, and the
yeah,
law doesn't protect. That's not even housebroken yet.
right, right, right.
Okay?
And
No.
so
So
that's
red
why
flag,
I
veterans,
kind of
be
wanted to
alert.
ask them what that program's about, because I am
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
And
Now, what they may be doing is getting puppies into the hands of veterans, those veterans making bonds with those puppies, and then
it could
offering
be.
those veterans training. That's possible.
That is.
But literally, those first 6, 7, 8 months of that dog's life, you're worried about teaching it not to piss on your rug.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
worried about teaching it not to chew and destroy. You're
Yeah.
worried about, finding out what that dog's look, that dog hasn't even had a
Behavioral.
chance to form its personality
Right.
and know what its proclivities are.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time he was one, he was very well trained, but I didn't feel like he was trained well enough to walk into PetSmart with him. I was
Right.
still working with him. When I did get him at 13 or 14 months, when we did go to PetSmart, he had kind of gone through that little puberty shift.
Yeah.
And I fixed him earlier than I should have. I fixed him at 6 months old. I really don't recommend that for health reasons. At the time, the studies were saying fix early. Now the studies are saying you need to wait till they're at least 1.5 or 2 before you fix them for medical reasons, lower
Right.
lower rates of testicular cancer, whatever. I lucked out. He didn't have any problems, but it can also, for a large breed like him, it could stunt their development. So talk to your vet, do your research, understand your breed. We won't get into that. By the way, there's no law that requires service dogs be fixed. I
Right.
recommend it, male or female. I recommend it because why add that extra distraction when your dog's trying to work?
Yeah. Oh
So I
yeah.
do recommend it,
Yeah. I do
but there's
too.
nothing that requires it. Okay.
And I
So,
recommend if you have your female dog in a semi truck, get her fixed
yeah.
too, because there'll
Yeah.
be blood everywhere.
Well, see, no. So Munchie's a Mastiff and she's about to turn 3. I think she turns 3 in 2 weeks. She's in heat for her third time. And now she is considered an adult. Now, medically, it's recommended that I fix her. So we're going to get her altered.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember reading this, and I got to do a little investigation, but I think I remember reading that there is essentially a canine tubal ligation, which means I'd still have to deal with heat, but she would not be able to breed. And again, what I'm talking about is potential health issues.
Right.
Mastiffs have a history of some serious health things. And this is one hell of a healthy Mastiff. I keep my dogs healthy. She is fit. She's fucking dieseled. She
Right.
is just a ball of muscle. And you see Mastiffs and they're fat and they're lazy. Not her. She's a ball of muscle. She's energetic. She plays, she runs, she plays fetch. She's a very healthy animal. He's 13 years old. He was supposed to die when he was 9. He is as healthy as a 13-year-old dog can, 100-pound dog can be. I'm not very healthy, but my dogs are, by God, you know. And I'm working on myself. Uh,
That topic brings up another point, and I don't know of any organization that's out there. So you got Joe Snuffy gets a service dog, however he gets it, however whether he trains it or gets it, buys it, whatever, right? But now you have the vet bills, the grooming bills, the
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And
yeah.
I don't know of any organization out there that gives you a dog and then says, "Hey, we're going to cover the vet as long as that dog's alive." I don't think that
There's
exists.
yeah. So okay, so that leads me to another organization that I really disapprove of, along the same veins as ADI, Assistance Dogs International. I absolutely despise the Association of Service Dog Providers for Military Veterans. I don't like them for a couple of reasons. I had a long conversation with their CEO at the time, Jeremiah Blocker, a couple of years ago, because he wanted to talk to me because I was in opposition of the Pause Act. Um, I've never supported the Pause Act because it's bullshit. We'll get to that. Anyway, when I talked to him, he told me that we have to do something about these fake service dogs. That's why we want to get involved. We want to be where the VA, if the VA sends veterans for service dogs, because then they're certified and we know they're trained. Well, right there tells me that the CEO of this, what is becoming a major umbrella organization for service dog training, doesn't understand the law.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no such thing as a fake service dog. No dog gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to put my vest on today and go piss in the meat aisle at the Piggly Wiggly. No dog.
No. But there is
There
piss
are
poor owners.
fraudulent dog owners who put vests on their dogs and lie. The
Yep.
dog didn't do a damn thing. Unless it's a cat in a dog costume, there's no such thing as a fake dog.
Yep.
Okay. So, first of all, this organization is founded on the principles that they don't understand. Okay.
Yep.
Second of all, he stated that their intended goal, just like ADI, was to become the sole source of legitimate service dogs in the United States. That would mean infringing on the rights of disabled people to train dogs by themselves. They want to change the ADA and take away our rights.
Yeah. So they can make a
Okay.
profit off that.
Yeah, so they can make a profit off of it. They got this Pause Act pushed through, and if you talk to any veteran who's involved with one of those pause programs, it's a clusterfuck. It is ass backwards. But it did provide for veterinary insurance for the veteran's dog from the VA if the dog comes from a ADI or Association of Service Dog Providers for Military Veterans program. Okay. So, sort of, that exists. Now, the VA has an existing program under the prosthetics department, and Secretary Shulkin established this, and then it's been twisted. At the time, Secretary Shulkin determined that agoraphobia, which goes along with PTSD very well, was a physical disability and could be uh, uh, assisted by a service dog through the prosthetics department. Now, prosthetics from the VA, will provide a seeing eye dog. You can get that through a program. The VA doesn't buy you the dog, they attach you to the program, and then they provide the insurance for the dog. Okay.
Okay.
In the same way, if you got a dog previously under an ADI program, you've fulfilled the requirements of that program, you would get insurance from the VA for the dog. They didn't provide the dog, but if it came from an approved program, well, now The Association of Service Dog Providers for Military Veterans under the PAWS Act is in that umbrella too. But in order to get into the PAWS Act and get the program, it is a red ass. It is a fucking military grade, international military grade red ass. It is the PAWS Act. Here's what the Puppies Assisting Wounded Service Members Act should have said. One, the VA will no longer, as an organization, deny the efficacy of service dogs to assist disabled veterans with post traumatic stress. Two, the VA will adhere universally to its own policy, accepting service dogs and defining them the same way the Americans with Disabilities Act does. And if we're going to put any kind of money or anything into it, three, the VA will provide insurance, veterinary insurance assistance for disabled veterans who use service dogs to assist with their disabilities. And that is all that the PAWS Act should have said. That's it.
Yeah.
Stop saying that it doesn't work. We know it works. Look at all the veterans who are still alive. Follow your own rules. And if we're going to throw money into it, help those veterans.
Yeah.
You buy them wheelchairs occasionally, help with their service dogs. That's it. Didn't need to name organizations, none of that bullshit. And so one of the questions I started asking from the beginning is Assistance Dogs International is based out of the Netherlands. What the fuck does a foreign organization have to do with determining policy in the United States Department of Veterans Affairs?
Yeah, you're right.
That doesn't, I'll tell you how. Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you exactly how. Rory Diamond, CEO of Assistance Dogs International America. This is how.
He bought his way in.
The right grease and the right fucking wheels. That's how it happened. That's how the PAWS Act got through. Look, not to get political, but in order to protect disabled people, I have to be a little bit political. Ron DeSantis was one of the people who helped support and push the PAWS Act. That Jeremiah Blocker convinced him, hey, we need to get this into Washington, right? Okay. Jeremiah Blocker wants to strip the rights of disabled people to train their own service dogs. He wants his organization to be the only way you can get a real service dog in the United States. Mm-hmm. There's a very real threat that if Ron DeSantis makes it to the White House, one of those favors he's going to have to return is to allow that to be considered. Just like they're trying to take away our rights with the Second Amendment, we have to come to a reasonable, same thing. I actually made a t-shirt that says infringing on the rights of the disabled in order to control the dishonest is not the solution. That's literally what they want to do. Just like infringing on the rights of the law-abiding citizen in order to try to control the criminal isn't the solution. You have a nice rack of some sweet hardware right behind you. They want to take those away from you because they look scary, and a bad guy shot somebody with a pistol. You understand where I'm coming from.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say this is one of the reasons I have a Facebook group for PTS Dog. I barely use Facebook anymore. And one of the reasons, especially once the lockdowns happened and the keyboard warriors came in full force, one of the reasons I don't use Facebook so much anymore, it is a direct parallel between the attempts to limit the Second Amendment and the attempts to curtail the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's a direct parallel. And the blue-haired screaming mob couldn't. It's different. It's not the same. The dog's not going to kill somebody. It won't. Really? That dog is just as capable of killing a human being as, well, my gun's not capable of killing a human being unless I pull the trigger.
Right.
Okay. The dog's actually technically more dangerous than a gun, because if I'm not controlling him, he is capable of killing. Whereas the gun, I have to do it. The gun's an inanimate object. Okay. But they couldn't get this through their head. And the attacks, oh my God, the social media. Oh, yeah. I was just like, look, my sanity I don't need this.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
put myself out there. I did the work. I did the research. I reached out and helped veterans. I still do. Veterans come on the group, come on the page, they ask for help. I'm right there. And I have a good team of admins who help and keep it maintained. But veterans aren't the only disabled community.
Right.
This book is written in perspective of a veteran for veterans, but it's applicable with the exception of the chapter on the VA. This is applicable to any disabled person who wants to handle a service dog. Okay. Um, and that's another thing you need to understand if you're thinking about going this route. There are there's a lot of places you can go. There's a lot of places you can go. I recommend two things. First of all, I have to say this: I am on the board of the Jaeger Foundation. What we do, we're right now focused primarily in Michigan. What we do is we connect a veteran to a dog to a trainer for cooperative training. I've had a lot to do with making sure that we're doing cooperative training and that we're only using positive reinforcement. They brought me on the board and I said, on these conditions, we make these changes. So jaegerfoundation.org, Jaeger. I'll make sure you have the link. But I'm also friends with Bart Sherwood, who is the founder of TADSAW, Train a Dog, Save a Warrior. TADSAW is founded on the cooperative training model. They put a dog in your hands. You get a dog. You take your dog to training. You train with your dog for as long as it takes until you and the trainer agree the dog's ready. They give a public access test. There's a list of things the dog must be able to do according to TADSAW for TADSAW to say, we certify we have trained this dog. Okay. But what they're doing is teaching you to train your dog. And it's the same model we learned in the military. Learn one, do one, teach one.
Yeah.
You go learn how to train your dog. Next thing you should do, if all TADSAW trainers, part of their focus is to work themselves out of a job. They should, if they have a class of 8 people, they should have 8 trainers by the time they graduate. 8 people willing to go out, join up with another veteran and say, yeah, I'll help you train your dog. Okay. That's the whole concept. A lot of people don't like TADSAW for a couple of reasons. Early on, Bart was under a lot of attack from Canines for Warriors and from ADI because it's a completely different model. ADI, that mindset, they are locked into more of the robotic behavior dogs. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they have developed their training methods and their model based on seeing eye dogs. Seeing eye dogs have to have a very rigid protocol because they have a very specific task. And in order to do that effectively and safely, they have to have essentially robotic behavior, as robotic as a dog can get, right? Well, they don't interact personally or personably with their handlers very much. They're trained not to. That's exactly the opposite of what a post-traumatic stress dog does.
Right.
A PTS dog needs to interact at all times. We need to be this dog and I have been connected, joined at the hip for 13 years.
Right.
That connection is how he was effective. That connection has got me to the point where I drove across the country and met strangers on purpose 5 times, interviewed them, took pictures, made phone calls, talked to them, broke out of my little safe my little safe bunker, right? Those walls are gone because of the interaction from that dog. Okay. That's what we got to build. And so the other reason that TADSAW's kind of gotten a bad rap in some places back in the early days, and occasionally you'll hear, "Oh, TADSAW, that's the worst behaved dog I've ever seen." Well, here's why. You, with the leash in your hand, are responsible for the behavior of your service dog at all times, not the organization. Okay. People want to blame the organization when the veteran may not be doing their job as a handler. And one of the things that I stress in this book is responsibilities of the handler. Yeah, you have the right, But with that right comes responsibility. Same as you have the right to keep and own a firearm. With that right comes some responsibility. You
Absolutely.
are responsible to make sure it doesn't get used inappropriately. Same damn thing with the dog. It is your responsibility. And people have this false sense of security. Oh, well, it's trained by so and so. And they think that they can just go on cruise control. And it's not that way. At the end of the day, if shit hits the fan and you end up in court over your dog, the organization is going to turn their back on you.
Yep.
They're going to say, "We trained it. We're not responsible after that.
We don't know
It's on
we
our
don't know what
hands."
happened once the dog
Yeah,
was in their
yeah,
possession.
okay.
Yeah.
So people blame the organization and rather than and see. So everybody in this society today wants to be a victim, but nobody's willing to accept responsibility,
Yeah.
right? The ADA, you have to be responsible. To handle a service dog, you have to accept that you are responsible. If
Yeah.
you're not willing to be responsible, don't get a service dog.
Yeah.
If you're not, if you look, especially owner trainers like me, people who trained our own service dogs, we go way above and beyond. We go beyond. Like I said, he's certified AKC Advanced Good Citizen. I've trained him way beyond that certification. I have trained him to behave. Wait, look, I have a picture of me holding a cup of coffee, a paper cup of coffee, and his leash tucked in my pinky with a flock of ducks walking past him within 3 feet. And he's not, and I did spill a drop of coffee. Okay. That's way above and beyond most training.
Yeah.
Okay. That is the mindset you have to have because we literally, when we walk into a restaurant or a store or a hotel with our service dog, we're balancing on a very precarious edge because of the Karens with their Fifi the Wonder Poodles.
Yeah.
The United States, the country expects when you walk in with a dog, oh dear Lord. And so we have to be above and beyond that. We have to set an example. Every place that I've taken Skeeter, I have got the compliment, wow, I've never seen a dog that well behaved. And my response is, that's his job. That's part of his job.
Yep.
That is my responsibility. If you're not willing to accept that responsibility as a handler, don't get a dog. If you think, oh, it's trained, I don't have to worry about it, you're wrong. Don't get a dog.
Yeah.
Don't get a dog. Okay.
Yeah. I agree. And you know, JJ, I didn't know that you wrote a book, or if I had
Oh,
known, I would have bought it and been able to ask a little bit more
I've written
questions
two.
about it.
I've written
Okay.
two. So this is post-traumatic stress disorder in the service dog. PTS dog. It's a portmanteau of PTSD and service dog, right? Okay. It's only 100 pages. I've got interviews with vets, photos with some of the vets that I've interviewed. This guy, I love this guy. This is Josh Strati. Grunt is gone, unfortunately. Josh trained his own dog. Josh started training other vets to train their dogs. Great story. Um, and so yeah, uh, look at this goober. We're at Yosemite. He always was a little bit of a. So I go through how the dog helps with PTSD. Well, first of all, chapter one: what is a service dog? Okay, what is a service dog? Everything we've discussed about the ADA is in the first chapter of this book. Um, hang on a second. Let's see here. There's a table. I wrote this damn thing. I should know what's in it, but this is no longer my focus because I can only say the same thing so many times.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of repeating myself. We had a show, the Service Dog Show was on DV Radio. There are podcasts out there at Podbean, on the DV Radio channel, on pretty much anywhere you can find DV Radio stuff. You can find our shows. Anyway, chapter one: what is a service dog? Chapter two is how does a service dog help with PTSD? PTSD and the service dogs. Chapter two. Chapter three is hi baby. Chapter three is that's the Mastiff. She wants attention. I think chapter three is public access. What to do when you go to a restaurant, store, things like that. Chapter 4 is, I think, the VA. No, chapter 4 is training. Now, I don't tell you how to train your dog. I talk about different methodologies, some of the conversation we've had here. Chapter 5 is access to the VA. Basically, what chapter 5 boils down to is no, chapter 5 is registry. Chapter 6 is the VA. Registry question, which there's a lot of arguments. Oh, we should have a registry. Why not? Um, anyway, it's all in here. And then the stories from some veterans. Jerry Birchfield, Vietnam veteran, Marine Vietnam veteran, literally one of the people who got spit on when he came home. Wouldn't tell people he was a veteran because of the way they were treated. He's in here, his story. The other book I've written is Why Is That Doggy in the Store? And this is illustrated by Coast Guard veteran Carla Nimitz. She is a great comic illustrator. She's amazing. You should check her out and interview her. Carla's awesome. And this is aimed at, remember I told you there are 3 reactions to a dog in the store?
Yep.
This is aimed at the, oh, doggy, and especially the kids.
Yeah.
And so this teaches children how to behave around a service dog, why they shouldn't go interact with the service dog. And we talk about different kinds of service dogs. And Carla, look at that. She got me with that one. I teared up when I saw that picture. I was like, damn it, Carla. And she was like, is it too much? And I'm like, hell no, that's going in the book. Yeah. Right. So, and then we read a story. There's a young lady with, I can't remember, some severe, multiple sclerosis, I think. And she has a Great Dane, and her Great Dane helps her walk, you know? So really, this is a really great, this is just a really fun thing. And what I did was I wrote this for my grandchildren because they didn't understand why Grandpa always had Skeeter with him. Uncle Skeeter. They called him Uncle Skeeter. So this one's available on Amazon. This one's available anywhere you can get books, but it's probably the least expensive at booklocker.com, which is my publisher. Okay. And again, I'm not trying to sell my books. I make pennies. Yeah. It's not about making money. It's about getting the information into veterans' hands. If I could afford to give these away, I would, but I publish this myself and it costs me a lot of money. But again, this is about getting information into the hands of veterans, not about making money. Same here. And so any nonprofits, if you want either of these books, I will purchase them at cost. I make nothing. We purchase them at cost and give them to you. You got to pay cost, though. You pay authors cost. So I make no profit. The publishers get the money, not me. Any nonprofit, period. That stands for any nonprofit. We'll make a deal. You tell me how many copies. I'll tell you what it is at cost. That's all you pay. I get nothing out of that deal. I don't want money from nonprofits for it. Right. The only reason there's money involved is because they can't print it for free. Right. So, yeah, I really do recommend that you think about using a service dog. I really do. I wish the Veterans Administration would say, hey, have you considered a service dog? But you got to be responsible. You got to be prepared for the responsibility. Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things, especially because when you walk in the door of any location with a service dog at your side, you are wearing a label. You have a big flag sitting right next to you, or a little one. There's no size limitation. There's no breed restriction for service dogs, with the exception, I said we'd mention it. We need to mention it. The Americans with Disabilities Act protects the right of disabled people to handle dogs, and in some cases, miniature horses as service animals, meaning pet dogs, pet breeds. Canis lupus familiaris, not hybrids. There are people who think it's cool to have a wolf hybrid or a coyote hybrid.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Legally, you are not protected to have that as a service dog. It's not legal. I don't care how well trained it is, how well behaved it is. That's not legal. And I'm going to leave you I know we need to wrap up. I'm going to leave you with a very controversial statement. Regardless of your status of disability, if you are in a public location like a grocery store with a dog, if the dog is well trained, if that dog is behaved, the dog is not causing a ruckus in the grocery store. I don't give a fuck if it's a service dog or not. I don't care.
Right.
If the lady with the little yap dog had her dog trained and it wasn't yapping all the way across the store, I wouldn't give a shit.
Right.
I really don't care. Live and let live. I don't care. And I really don't. You have an emotional support animal you take everywhere with you. Is it trained to behave? Then I don't give a fuck what its status is. I don't care if you're putting a vest on it, claiming it's a service dog, if it's trained.
I agree.
The problem is the assholes who throw a vest on a pet that's not trained to deal with those stresses.
Right.
And it's not the dog's fault. And we need to stop saying fake service dogs. It's not the dog's fault.
Right.
It's a bad owner. It's a fraudulent owner.
The dog
Blame
never
the
asked to be a
person.
service dog.
Same thing. Yeah. Same thing with guns. Stop blaming the fucking guns. It's the asshole pulling the trigger that's the problem. It's the asshole holding the leash that's the problem. We need to hold the right party accountable and no dogs
I agree.
going to jail.
I agree. Absolutely. Well, JJ, definitely get me those links, and
Yes.
I'm going to post them everywhere because this has been a topic that I've had a lot of interest in because I
Well,
know there is a lot of veterans out there that want to go down this road,
yeah,
but
there's, like I said, I've got a page on Facebook, PTS Dog. There's a group, PTS Dog group. Uh, there's a lot. I have really worked hard to cultivate a good team of administrators to manage that group and keep the bullshit out. It's open to anybody. It's not veteran exclusive. We just all happen to be veterans. Okay. And there are some people very much better educated on the subject in my group than me. Um, and then if you go look under DV Radio, anywhere you can find podcasts for the Service Dog Show, there's a year and a half worth of podcasts. I
okay,
stopped podcasting. I stopped doing it because I was tired of repeating myself.
yeah,
The Americans, unless things shift in DC, and unfortunately, as much as I like Ron DeSantis, if he gets elected president, there is a risk that disabled people will start to lose some rights, and specifically service dog handlers. And we need to be very aware of that because one of the people who has his ear or has had his ear is the person who helped form the Association of Service Dog Providers for Military Veterans. And their entire principle is not to help veterans, it's to try to corner the market.
yeah.
We need to be very real about that. And I'm sorry if that hurts some feelings if you're associated with them. Go have a conversation with Jeremiah Blocker and tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I, I I agree, and that's another part of this show is about making veterans aware.
Yeah.
You know,
We need to be aware, especially when it becomes, look, if you're disabled, we're one of the last groups of truly marginalized people. We really are. We have now, since 1990, we have laws protecting our right to equality and to equal access. 1990, the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964.
yeah,
It took them another almost 30 years to catch up and make sure that disabled people were protected for equality as well. And don't ever let anybody tell you that the ADA gives you the privilege. It gives you the right to have a service dog, which would make it a privilege. No, just like the Second Amendment, it protects your right to train and handle a service dog. It is your right protected by the law, not given by the law.
absolutely. I agree, and I appreciate you coming on the show, JJ.
You
And
betcha, anytime.
I will get you the links to this when it's going to go live, and that way we can share it with your group, and I don't know, you can use
Cool.
it for knowledge for new people coming into your group. And I'm definitely going to. I got a lot of veterans that I'm going to be passing this on to because I get this question all the time, and I don't have the experience.
Well, and like I said, I saw the vacuum you see, so I decided to step up and do something about it,
That's
and
awesome.
made some amount of wave, but a lot of times I felt like John the Baptist shouting in the wilderness. Not a lot of people hearing,
Yep.
and and a lot of people who still to this day let their feelings get in the way of what the facts are.
Yeah.
You
I,
know,
I agree. Well, I appreciate it, and
you bet,
you take care, and thanks again for coming on.
you betcha.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.